tell us a little bit about yourself and what you did on campus here, and then we're going to talk about Greece.
Super. Well, it took me a long time to tell you what all I did here, but I came...
You were here a long time, yes.
Here a long time. I came here in 1970, right out of graduate school, from New Orleans to LaGrange. And after 10 years in the basement of Hawks, where the art department was located, we moved into the Lamar Dodd Art Center, where I became the director of the museum, the college's museum, and taught classes, and retired 3 years ago.
Okay. How many times did you go to Greece with students?
Interesting that you asked that question, because I was the first professor here to take students on a Jan trip.
Oh my gosh.
And it was to Greece.
I love it.
But only had 8 students, and that wasn't enough to warrant us going financially. We needed more for a group, to have a big bus. So we paired the program with Wofford College in South Carolina. They had about 11 or 12 students. And so we went to get together.
Oh, perfect.
And it was a great trip. We went all over Greece, and had the woman who went, the professor from Wofford, was actually a Greek teaching there. She was teaching in the business department there. So we got to visit her and her family in a little village in Greece.
Oh my gosh,
while we
wow.
traveled around. So, and then I've taken students, we've taken them to Turkey, we've taken students to France on a couple of occasions. We've been to Italy quite often. That's my favorite place to take students, other than Greece, of course. It's a transformative experience to take students to another country and expose them to other cultures. So it's something that is almost mandatory, I would think, for someone to get a full education.
I agree. Well, you have pictures for us, so I cannot wait for you to tell me everything you know about Greece.
What I'm showing you here is the way I looked when I first went to Greece. That's me on the right, if you can't tell. But
oh yes, I can tell it.
the other fellow is one of my dearest friends. He's a retired professor from Rice. I just visited with him in Houston not too long ago, as a matter of fact, about a month ago. But he's a Greek American. In other words, he came to America, his family did, as a first generation Greek. His name is Vasilios Poulos. And when he was teaching at Rice, he would take students and he would put them in his little village in the summers. They did summer programs. And I said to him once, I said, listen, when you go next, let me go with you. And he said, well, I'm not taking students this summer, but you come and I'll show you around. So I got my first experience in Greece was in about 1975 or thereabouts. I think I was about 25 years old. And interestingly, this fellow, his father was from a little village outside of Sparta. And his father never went back to Greece. He didn't want to ever go back to Greece for various and sundry reasons. He owned a restaurant in Columbia, South Carolina, where my friend Vasily grew up. But he told his son that he had a house there, and it was his house if he wanted it. So Vasily, teaching college and having his summers off, said, gee, I'm going to go back to my village and check this house out. He didn't even know that his family owned a house there.
Dang.
He goes there, walks into the village, and the first person he runs into is his aunt, whom he had never met.
Wow.
To give you an idea. And the aunt recognized him, I guess from photographs, or maybe just the way he looked. It probably reminded her of his father. So I've been to this little village probably 3 or 4 times over the years, and he's a dear, dear friend of mine. He's the godfather of one of my daughters, my first daughter.
Special.
And he's a painter, a wonderful painter. We've exhibited his paintings here. They're beautiful abstract paintings. And so my luck is that I got to go live in this village, and he had a great guide to show me around, which he was able to do. And this is his uncle, Uncle Pano. Back then I was working with a large camera, a large 4x5 inch view camera, which you have to get under a focusing cloth.
Yeah.
He asked if I would photograph his family for him? I said, sure. And so they were very honored, I think, to be photographed for my friend, for him to have. And so I got to photograph his uncle. His uncle was a freedom fighter. His uncle was, the Germans put him in prison.
Oh
And
my
after the war, he walked all the way back. As a matter of fact, the shepherd's crook, the cane that he's holding, he gave to me.
Oh,
And
wow.
I still have it in my home. But wonderful man.
Well, he was a hero.
He was a hero, especially to that village. This is his cousin, Stavros, and Stavros' daughter. You can obviously tell that she's a daughter of that man because they have the same exact nose. This man owned a wonderful olive growing
Oh, cool.
farm. Wonderful man. This is another cousin in the village, a guy named George. That's not the Greek word, but he, when I asked to photograph him, he said, you can photograph me only, but I have to change my clothes. I said, why? He said, well, I want to dress like an American. So he went and changed into cowboy clothes for me to photograph. He wanted to live in America. He said, I'm going to build a house and I'm going to make it look like an American house. He was a very big fan of Westerns. When you're in this village, one thing you will notice, if you go in any village in Greece, maybe not so much the big cities anymore, but in the villages, which is the real Greece if you ask me, you will see scenes like this. Men, nothing but men in a cafe, bar kind of place. And most of the times they're playing cards. And you'll drive through these villages and you'll look through windows and you'll see nothing but men in there. And even seated outside, they'll be with their worry beads and hanging out. So get used to that when you're in Greece, especially in the hinterland, because it's very much a man's world. This is the village priest, and by the way, this little town is the town of Carriae. Carriae, it's right out, about 10 miles outside of Sparta.
Okay.
And it's a famous little village because it was the village that paid tribute to Athens by giving them the caryatids on the porch of the maidens. You know, the women with the that became columns
Yes.
at the porch of the maidens of the Erechtheum. Well, supposedly they came from this village, and they represent the women of the village. That's why they're called caryatids. And Herodotus wrote about them and said the reason they named them that was because the women in that part of the country would carry their jugs on top of their head and carry weight. So that's why the caryatids how they got their name. These are the plane trees at the well of the village, and you can see they're huge, old
Yes.
plane trees. And you can also see, if you look closely, you can see that they've been burned. The Germans, these trees, these ancient trees are probably 2,000 years old, were so sacred to these villagers that they saved them as best they could. But the Germans knew that one of the punishments was to burn, tried to kill the trees. But they didn't do it, and they're still there. And when you go there, this is where everyone congregates to play. Children come, and children get inside these trees and climb up and down. It's really a wonderful sight. And this is a typical home in this village. It's a mountain village. It's very primitive, mostly olive groves. And you will see new housing going up, and you'll say, well, why don't they finish these houses? Well, a Greek will build a one-story house, but he will build it in such a way that another story could be added to for the next generation.
Yeah.
And like Italy and like a lot of countries, European countries, that's what's wonderful about Greece. The families live in the same house. If you marry, if you're the oldest son, it's not necessary if you go live somewhere else. You just add
Add
on
a story. I love
add a story to your home. And so this is a wonderful scene of one of the village homes. I get up early in the morning. Walking down the street of the village, I see a woman opening. The sun's just coming out, and she's opening the chicken coop to let the chickens out into the yard. Every Greek home in this village had a bread oven out back where they, they wood fired.
Oh my gosh, I bet it was delicious.
It was. Unfortunately, many of them are not still with us because they found out you can do it in the oven just as well. And so one of the sites, this is absolutely amazing to me, one of the sites near his village, near the town of Tripoli, on the way back to Athens, off a side road, is a church. Now listen to this. This is absolutely incredible. Built by one person. You will see throughout Greece, as you travel around, you will see churches everywhere. Small chapels, churches. It's almost incumbent upon the Greeks to build a shrine or a chapel, if you can afford it, if you can do it. This man was a stonemason. He worked in the town of Argos as a stonemason. And if you're a stonemason, if anyone who knows anything about carpentry or stonework, you have a lot of leftovers. So over the 20, 30, 40 years he worked as a stonemason, he saved all of his materials and decided to buy a piece of property and build a church.
I can totally see it now that you said that. You can see the different stones. Oh my gosh, wow.
Here he is.
Wow.
His name was Costa. I can't remember his last name, how to pronounce it right now, but he posed for me. I got to meet him. He was a friend of my friend, and he met us there one day and showed us the church. And this is all hand built. He and his son built this, just the two of them. And as you can see, rather than building it in a traditional style, just stucco, simple structure, he combined Minoan, Egyptian, classical Greek orders, Byzantine influences began to creep into his work. It's a very eclectic kind of structure. This is the interior. Not only did he build the church, he also did the paintings inside.
Oh, look at that beautiful
the frescoes.
Yes.
And he wanted to have the church consecrated, so he had the church fathers, and patriarchs, and all come out to look at. Before it could be consecrated, he had to have it approved. He painted the saints and the figures inside in a modern dress.
Fascinating.
It prohibited the consecration. They said, no, you can only do it in the Byzantine style.
Huh.
So he had to erase all of the paintings,
Oh my goodness.
all the saints, and do it in a traditional Byzantine style before they would approve it. All right, well, this is the dome of the church, and usually in any Orthodox, and in some cases even Catholic churches, the image in the dome is reserved, since it represents heaven, the image would be the Pantocrator, the Christ, the Savior. And this looks very much like a 10th, 11th century icon, which is exactly what it is. So his style had to resort back to the Byzantine iconic style. As you drive around the country of Greece, you'll see stuff like this too, which are all religious shrines. And most people, like we do in America, when there's an accident or something, we'll put a cross up or something. Don't make the mistake of thinking every time you see these, because you'll see a lot of these on the back roads in Greece. These represent families who are building a shrine to their patron saint or what have you. Because not so much that someone was killed. Now, sometimes it is due to a death, but in many cases it's because an accident happened and they were saved. So it was the duty of the family to put up some sort of shrine to thank the saint that saved the family member from an accident. And in other cases, they just put them out there just because they want people to know that they have a shrine to God. So it's really a wonderful, or to a saint, particular saint. Now, what I'm going to show you next is astonishing, absolutely astonishing. This is a dock. Since you're going to Thessaloniki, you'll see, if you look at a map of Greece, there are three peninsulas at the very top. They look like fingers that stick out. The one in the middle is owned by the church. The Greeks, it's not Greece, it's owned by the church,
Oh, wow.
the Orthodox faith. It has been since about the 12th century. It's a peninsula that literally has 12 different monasteries and probably another dozen or two hermitages where monks can go and live by themselves. It's called Mount Athos. There's a big mountain there, Mount Athos. And it is the most astonishing place I have ever been in my life. It's just absolutely incredible. What's crazy is two things. Number one, when the Persians invaded Greece under Xerxes, the first time they attempted it, there was a bad storm and they lost a good number of ships at sea. And so Xerxes said, I ain't going that route again. We're going to cut a canal through this peninsula so our ships can hug the land. So they did start digging a canal there, but they weren't successful. But the other thing that's incredible about this island is such a beautiful place, just astonishingly beautiful. And only men can go there, and only male animals, supposedly.
They are
That's pretty
real specific.
Well, I'm sure they do make some exceptions, chickens and that sort of thing. But at any rate, it's sacred to Mary. Here's a peninsula devoted to the Virgin Mary, but only men could go there. So I got to go there. In order to get to go there, you have to prove that you're worthy, an art historian or something. I got letters from the president to signify that I was there to study the Byzantine icons. And also, you had to have a passport and a visa to go there.
Oh my gosh.
So you go with other pilgrims, and lo and behold, there are boats. You can't get there by land. There are no roads. You get there by boat. And this is what the monasteries look like.
Wow.
And these monasteries have been there since the 9th, 10th century. Wow. And monks have been living there since the 9th century, 10th century. And they're full of libraries with ancient manuscripts. There are, every wall are just incredible frescoes. Just the most beautiful sight you've ever seen. And the monks who live there, you would think most of them would be older men, but no, there are just as many young men there as there are old. The Orthodox faith, there's something really wonderful about it in Greece, because, and this is not just in Greece, but in other areas too. There's a Russian monastery there, there's a Syrian one there, there's even a British American one there.
Oh, wow.
But these are men who have given their lives to live a monastic life.
Yeah.
They cannot marry. They've chosen not to marry. It's an obstacle to a spiritual life, according to
Probably
them.
a vow of poverty.
They don't own anything.
Yeah.
And these are some of the monks
Yeah.
that were on the boat when we were on the way from the main port, where the men come to get on the boat to go back and forth. Now the monks go back and forth into town to bring medicine, that sort of thing. But the pilgrims who are there, when we were at the passport office in Athens, there were several other men there from different countries. One was a Russian guy. I'll never forget this. And we saw him the next day to get on the same boat that we were on. He got off, I think at the second stop, which was a Russian monastery. He got off that boat and knelt down and kissed the ground. I asked him, I said, "You really are amazed?" He says, "Yes, this is something my parents have saved for me to go.
Wow.
Everybody in my family, when they reach a certain age, are required to go." And
It almost sounds like in the Jewish faith, going to Jerusalem.
exactly.
And yes,
If you're a Muslim, Mecca,
Yeah, pilgrimage is a big thing in many parts, in many different faiths.
I have a friend who's an Orthodox priest in Mississippi, a Syrian congregation. I told him I went to Mount Athos. He said, "John, I've never been envious of you more so than I am of you. You got to go to the holy mountain."
And this man doesn't that's not how I would view a monk, right?
This man was on the same boat that I was on, and he had been a prisoner in some communist country for about 10 or 15 years, and they finally let him off. All the other monks on this boat would go up and shake his hand and hug him, and he was a special man. I finally found out why, because he had resisted the strictures to close his church down during the communist period.
Oh, wow.
And he kept it open, so they arrested him, put him in jail. And the pilgrims who knew of him, I noticed them giving him cash, and he was hiding it. He was hiding it behind his back. And I said, well, you know what? He doesn't want people to know he's making all this money. He literally had a wad of cash. And he was getting off one of the boats. There was one man on the boat that was infirm. He couldn't walk. He had to be in a wheelchair, but he would make. And I noticed this man give him the money.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't want anybody to see him do it, but he gave away that money that they were giving him. And then when you're walking around the monasteries and walking to the sites where the religious activities take place, you're looking at frescoes, and guess what you're looking at? This is God.
Okay, God.
This is God.
That's true. They look just alike.
Obviously, God created man in his own image. Right?
Yes.
They wake you up every morning by banging on bells and planks that make loud noises. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, they have services 3 times a day.
I was wondering their service times, yeah.
One's at 3 o'clock in the morning. And we had just arrived, and there was a service around 6 o'clock that night, and it was hot as a dickens. I was sweating, so I had to go take a shower. I took a shower real quick, and I'm laying in bed, in this little bed they gave me. And my friend says, John, we've got to go to the service. So I quickly dressed, but I didn't put on socks. I was in a hurry.
Yeah,
You know,
and it was hot, yeah.
So I run, and of course I'm walking with him into the sanctuary, and they tell me to sit in these chairs, and I'm sitting there in the chairs, and then the monks come in. And one monk came over to me, and he looked at my ankles. He said, no, pull your pants down. Hide your ankles. I said, I did my best.
Like, okay.
He didn't like me exposing my ankles. I guess I have some interesting ankles, I don't know, but he didn't like me. That gives you an idea how unworldly these men are.
Yeah.
But sitting in one of these chairs with this 12th century icon behind me, and I'm being told to hide my ankles. And this is where we'd eat. And of course, the monks go into these refectories and seat in a row. And the pilgrims, the Orthodox pilgrims, sit across directly from them. This is where the readings will take place in a sort of a pulpit shape. Guess what you eat? I had a bowl of rice. I had some oranges. No meat there. Water and I think a small glass of wine or something, but that was about it. It's just very meager meals. Potatoes, they grow their own. They grow their own food. You know, that's part of.
I mean, they're on an island like that or a peninsula. So
exactly, and this is the second refectory I went to. This one's a little more modern, as you can see. Now, Athens. This is a view of modern Athens. I warn you, it's a big city.
Yes.
You're only going to see a very small
Yes.
section of it. Thank goodness. You don't need to see a lot, because the main thing you're going to see there is the Acropolis and the Greek. There's a museum there that is just incredible. It's the Acropolis Museum. Well, I'm glad you're going with John Tures. Maybe he can make sense of the political system in Greece, because I can't. They have about 10 different political parties.
Yes.
They have a president who is chief of state, you might say a figurehead, and then they have a prime minister. It's a parliamentary system, and then you've got a consortium of all these political parties: communist, New Democracy, Democratic. They even have a party called the Spartan Party. Can you imagine such a thing? But so it's an incredible political system. I understand it's becoming a little bit more conservative, like a lot of governments are today, it seems. But they are very adamant in remaining free of any other outside influences. And this is an incredible center of Western civilization.
Yes.
This is the birth of democracy. This is the birth of not only democracy but also art in a real sense. Athens and the Athenians believed in perfection. They believed literally that that was the object of your life, was to reach perfection. Now they would probably tell you immediately that you can't find it. You're not going to get there. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't search for it. The Parthenon itself, the structure, the buildings that you're looking at are built according to a mathematical formula. The Greeks figured out that if you study nature long enough, everything has a structure to it, and that structure is numerical. You've heard of Pythagoras.
Oh, absolutely.
You've heard of Euclid. You know, so they gave us a conceptual world that we've inherited. The Greeks have, and you can see it tangibly in the architecture and in the art that they produced. So when you're looking at this stuff, don't just be impressed by the size of the temples and the fact that they have sculptures and things. Be impressed by their concept of what a temple is. Their concept was a place like a church. It's a religious place. It's a place where something happened that gave us knowledge about who we are as human beings. The Acropolis is where a contest was held between two gods, Athena, the Athena Parthenos. That's where the word Parthenos comes from, the virginal Athena, and Poseidon. You probably know.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the story. I mean, it's pretty generic, but all these other buildings are there related to. The Erechtheum, where King Erechtheus was buried, supposedly, and where the well that gushed water up from the ground was located, what Poseidon gave the Athenians. And the Porch of the Maidens, you can see it from here. So the thing you think about when you think about Athens and the art and the sculptures and things you're going to see there, you should think about the Greek belief that the purpose of life is to strive for betterment, to be as good as you can be. This is the first group I took to Greece.
Oh, wow.
There.
And is that Professor Barbara Knoll there?
She was on one of the, there she is.
Yeah, wow.
Well, I shouldn't say this is the first, one of the second or third ones that I took to Greece. This is just LaGrange College students. This was in January, too.
We're so lucky to be able to go in May. Just the weather just will be
It'll be
pristine.
beautiful.
Yes.
It'll be beautiful.
There she is. There's Athena.
Now, what you won't see is the purpose of the Parthenon, which was to house the statue of the goddess Athena. Most people say, well, these are idol worshippers, but they have. I have read that in front of this statue in ancient Greece, when they were cleaning the marble all the way, they discovered a recess in front of this statue that created a huge rectangular space. So why would there be a floor recess here? And there are people who believe that when you went in here, you didn't worship that statue. You didn't pay any attention to that statue. What you paid attention to was her reflection in the oil in that recess that was in front of it. So you would see the idea of the deity was an abstract thought. The early Christians believed that the pagans believed that these represented the gods. That's not true. They represented a semblance, a likeness maybe, a symbol of the god, not the god itself. The god itself was a concept in your head. How do you, the Platonic idea that the real reality is conceptual, And so even in this ancient time, the Greeks had already understood this concept of God being a reflection of a God. All right, I should warn you, and you tell your students, they're going to see a bunch of naked men. I went with adults once to Greece, and there was one woman that came up to me and said, "John, do not take us to any more museums where you show nothing but naked men." I said, "Listen, every museum in Greece is going to be full of naked men. You better get used to it." So explain to these people that are going there that a naked man is a beautiful thing. The Greeks believe very strongly that you should develop your mind as well as your body.
Yes.
The athletes of Greece. Now remember, Greece was a warrior state. And remember too that Greece wasn't just landlocked Greece. If you were Greek, that meant you spoke Greek. I don't care where you live. You could live in Asia Minor, you could live in North Africa, you could live in France and be Greek, as long as you were Greek if you spoke Greek. And Greeks had colonies all in those places, Italy, all over the place. The Greek concept of the human body was a place where you developed yourself as best you could. That meant you developed your mind as well as your body. So athleticism became very important to the Greeks for obvious reasons. These were warriors. These were men who went to war to protect themselves from the barbarians, the Persians and what have you. And then, of course, the civil wars broke out in Greece. But the Olympic Games, I was hoping you all were going to go to Olympia. The Olympic Games were developed to show that, to show how men could develop their bodies and their strength. And the Greek concept of beauty for a man was not to be muscle bound like these muscle men, Arnold Schwarzenegger types. That they would consider that ugly. You had to have grace. You had the beauty to the body was, again, a mathematical formula. And you'll see in the museums, the way they structure the museums, the one in Athens, the National Archaeological Museum, you walk in, the first thing you're going to see are statues that look like this. And your students may say, "Well, those look Egyptians." Well, that's because they were influenced by the Egyptians. The Egyptian pharaoh, that looks just like an Egyptian sculpture, but it's not. The Egyptians didn't depict nude male the way the Greeks did. If you'll notice, the V of his abdomen and groin area matches the V shape of the separation of his legs. These shapes here matches mastoid muscles. His eyes are curving just like, and repeats the same pattern of his chest. So this is really a study in geometry and the relationship of geometric shapes creating a harmony to make the whole. Now, the next thing that happens is, in about the 5th century, 4th century BC, the Greeks discover bronze, how to sculpt in bronze. You can represent the figure fully three-dimensional. And the idea of representing a figure that was just against the wall, where you couldn't even see the back of them, became, wait a minute, that's not the kind of perfection and completeness that we want. We want things to occupy full three-dimensional space. This is a bronze statue in that transitional period from that archaic period, the Kouros figure. Kouros means just simply young man. That's all Kouros means. This is the charioteer of Delphi. At one time, this was a man standing in a chariot. He was the charioteer. The owner of the horses were the men who won the race, not the charioteer. He was just a
jockey.
Jockey, and then he would have had horses in front of him in bronze. Can you imagine? And a bronze chariot to be standing in. That's all gone. They found fragments of it. But as you can see, he's moving his body out into space. And the next thing you get is this incredible, at Olympia, they found this statue here by Praxiteles. you see a figure that literally is three-dimensional. He's got the weight shift principle, his hip is out, he's got his elbow on one column, his arm is out in front, he's holding grapes in his hand, and he's holding a baby, Bacchus, his brother. Polyclitus came along in about the 5th century, around the same time as Pericles, and also Phidias, who did the sculptures of the Parthenon. Polyclitus produces a piece of sculpture completely based upon mathematical proportions.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
In other words, everything in that piece of sculpture he's got a formula. The length of your finger in terms of its relationship to the hand, the distance from the hand to the elbow,
Oh my gosh.
the
Wow.
the distance of the two eyes. I mean, the distance, everything is written down. He called it the canon, where we get the word canon. His was Kanon, the canon of Polyclitus. In other words, all of a sudden, the Greeks have been shown how to represent the idealized male figure. Don't let your students think that every male in ancient Greece looked that way. As a matter of fact, during the Olympic Games, let me tell you something. When the Olympic Games started, it began as a foot race. That's where we get the word stadium, a stayed race. And men would run back and forth. That's, the original games were really just foot races and javelin throwing and stuff. But, it developed eventually into chariot races and all this kind of stuff. But in the stayed race, there are records of men who won the race even though they came in second. Now, wait a minute. Somebody ran faster, but the judges didn't award him the win because he didn't look good.
I would be mad if I were that
Yeah.
athlete.
But that gives you an idea what the Greek concept of
Perfection.
winning and perfection is. If you ran a beautiful, graceful race, but even though you came in second, you could have won the race.
It's like a beauty contest, you know.
It kind of was. It kind of was. And guess what else would happen? If you got caught cheating, this idea that the Olympics were this wonderful, pristine, athletic event, there were cheaters like crazy. They would cheat like crazy. And you know what your penalty was if you got caught cheating? Your penalty was you had to erect a statue of Zeus and pay for it.
Wow.
And as the athletes came from the gymnasium to compete, they walked down a path with all these statues of all these little, they called them Zanes, little statues of Zeus. And the inscription underneath was, Stephanos was found cheating. He did something wrong. He pulled hair when you.
Yeah.
So he had to pay this fine. So it was dishonor that caused the cheating to cut down. But if you won the race, when you went back home,
You were a hero.
not only that, you had food for the rest of your life, the best meals they could provide, and they would knock a hole in the wall of your village and let you come pass through. You had an entry to your village
Dang.
without anybody. So the Olympics is another wonderful place to go to talk about Greek culture.
Oh, absolutely.
When you're there in Athens, I recommend this restaurant. It's a wonderful place. It's not far from the Tower of the Four Winds.
Okay.
So when you're there, just walk up the hill and you'll find this place. It's called Platanos. Take your kids here to eat. Don't pay any attention to those guides. They're going to take you to places where they get a kickback. You go here and get a real good Greek meal,
An authentic meal.
an authentic meal. And this is what my students looked like when they were there after the Greek musicians started playing music.
Oh, yeah.
They got up and had a good time.
What are some just plain tips, right, about being in Greece that you would give our students?
The main tip I would give the students is to do as much reading as they can before they go, and do a little research and have conversations with people who've been and that sort of thing. Realize you're in a foreign country. It drives me crazy when American students go to Europe and they go in a restaurant and like in America, we love fast food places. The Greeks, when they have a meal at night, it's usually a 2 or 3 hour deal, you know.
And it's late. It's very late.
Yeah, very late. So just be on your best behavior. Represent your country, for God's sake. You're there. You're an American, and especially in these little villages, you know, you should realize it's a different lifestyle than you have in this country, and don't expect them to bring you a check right away. You know, you to the Greeks, to feed you and get you out is an insult. You know, they don't want to do that. They want you to enjoy the meal and be there, and make sure they talk to people. The Greeks all speak English. You won't have any problem speaking English over there. But be courteous to people. That's the main thing, and be careful. You know, there are a lot of pickpockets in Greece, as there are everywhere. Especially, they love to prey on Americans. So keep your passports tucked away somewhere where you're not carrying them around in your back pocket. Don't look. I tell you what, the main advice I would give my students when I was traveling is, if you go off in a group, try not to look like you're an American tourist. I mean, don't wear Georgia shirts on and all that kind of stuff. You know, that's a dead giveaway. But there's a kind of music too that you would do well to listen to too. It's rimbetica. Have you ever heard of rimbetica music? Mm-mm. It's the music. It's sort of like American jazz music.
Okay.
And it was developed during the Ottoman Turks' occupation of Greece. And there were places in Greece where men and musicians would play kind of soul music, you might say, rimbetica music. And there are places in Athens you can go and hear it, rimbetica. And if you want to get a feeling for, the soul of Greece, go to one of those bars or restaurants where they have somebody playing rimbetica. Well, you go, any restaurant you go into, they probably have a live band in there. But that's not rimbetica.
I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah, but that's not rimbetica. Rimbetica is real soulful music. It really reminds you of Southern soul music.
We during the day we're going to be on the tour, and then we'll have dinner together as a group and everything. Mm-hmm. But just to go experience the culture at night is I wouldn't call it like nightlife, like a club. It's this live music that I haven't experienced it, but
every place will have music. Yeah, in Athens there's a street. In a region right underneath the Acropolis, there's a place called the Plaka, and there's streets, but it's just one tourist shop after another, and jewelry shop. By the way, when you go in any of those shops, you can bargain with those people. Don't if somebody wants to buy some gold jewelry or something, don't ever. They'll say, this is 150 euros or something. Offer them 100. Bargain with them if you want to buy some. They're accustomed to that kind of stuff.
Well, thank you so much. We
Surely.
appreciate it.
Surely.